The clinking of champagne glasses echoed through the grand ballroom of the Sterling Hotel. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting golden light across 200 of Beverly Hills' most influential people. Everyone was there to celebrate Emma, my daughter who had just inherited $33 million and was now officially engaged to Bradley Sterling, heir to a hotel empire. Yet as I stood near the back of the room, in my polished work boots and clean shirt, I felt less like a father celebrating his child's success and more like an intruder in her carefully curated new world. The smile on Emma's face was flawless, the kind you practice in mirrors when you're determined to look like you belong. When she finally walked over to me, her perfume trailing behind her like a wall I couldn't cross, she leaned in and whispered, "Dad, you need to understand something. You're not welcome in this world anymore." Her words sliced through the music, through the chatter, through years of sacrifice. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. This was the little girl I had raised alone after her mother, Rebecca, passed away. The same girl I taught to ride a bike, walk to school, and sat with during every scraped knee and heartbreak. Now she looked at me like I was a liability to be managed. I forced a smile, hiding the storm raging inside. Because what Emma didn't know was that her inheritance came with conditions. Conditions she had just violated in the most public way possible. The lawyers had been clear when Rebecca's family money passed down. Respect and support for surviving family members were not optional, they were requirements, and Emma had signed those documents without a second thought. I adjusted the cuffs of my shirt and looked out across the ballroom. Everyone was watching her, but no one was watching me. That was exactly how she wanted it. What she didn't realize was that every insult, every moment of public humiliation, every time she introduced me as just a construction worker, had been documented, not because I cared about the money, I never needed a dime of it, but because her mother's legacy demanded accountability. A string quartet played softly as waiters carried silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. Emma floated from guest to guest, dazzling them with charm while keeping me tucked away in the shadows. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Margaret Davis, Rebecca's attorney. Her message was simple. "Everything is ready. The committee will review her behavior after the party. If she slips tonight, it's over." I slid the phone back into my pocket and exhaled slowly. My daughter had no idea how close she was to losing everything. Emma returned, linking her arm with Bradley's. He was tall, polished, the kind of man who had never worked a day in his life, yet spoke as though the world owed him respect. He shook my hand with a grip meant to establish dominance and said, "Glad you could make it, Jake. Emma told me you don't get out much." I smiled, letting the comment hang. Emma looked relieved, as if my silence was proof I knew my place. What she didn't realize was that silence can be a weapon. The master of ceremonies tapped his glass, calling for attention. Emma stepped onto the stage, her diamond necklace catching the light as she raised the microphone. "Tonight isn't just about our engagement," she said brightly. "It's about stepping into the life we deserve." The crowd erupted in applause. I stood still, my jaw tightening. Because what Emma didn't know, what not a single person in that ballroom knew, was that I wasn't just a construction worker in steel-toed boots. For 25 years, I had built an empire in silence. Wilson Construction Group, a multi-billion-dollar company with projects across 12 states. And while Emma dismissed me as an embarrassment, I held more power in my calloused hands than anyone in that glittering room. But tonight wasn't about revealing that truth. Tonight was about watching whether my daughter valued her inheritance more than her family. And when she leaned into the microphone, her next words made the choice crystal clear. Applause swelled as Emma lifted her glass. "To new beginnings," she trilled. "To partnering with families who understand excellence." Her gaze skimmed past me like I was furniture. Laughter rippled. Bradley kissed her cheek. A camera flashed. A waiter offered me champagne. I declined, keeping my hands free. Silence can be a weapon. Patience, too. The quartet slid into a waltz. Emma came down from the stage with Caroline and Richard Ashworth flanking her like bookends gatekeepers she craved. "Emma, Darling, Caroline purred. Introduce us to your family. Emma's smile thinned. This is Jake, she said lightly. He's in development. Richard extended a cool hand. Commercial or residential? Foundations, I said. Structural integrity. Emma cut in brisk. He supervises crews. Salt of the earth stuff. Caroline's eyes dropped to my boots. How authentic. The moment passed, except for the committee counting moments. My phone buzzed Margaret. Remember, witnesses matter. Minutes later, by the floral arch, Emma held court. Bradley's board seat is nearly confirmed, she announced. We're curating our circle carefully. A lifestyle reporter edged closer. And your father, what does he do? Emma's jaw clicked. She eyed the raised phones, then my rough hands. He works construction, she said. Sweet but brittle. We don't really socialize in the same spaces. Chuckles. Heat rose in my chest. I stayed still. Of course I love him, she added, but brand alignment matters. I've had to teach him what's appropriate around my real family. Real family. The quartet missed a beat. Buzz. Margaret again. Clause 12. Public rejection. Logged. I turned to leave, but Emma's voice pinned me. Dad, could you wait in the lounge? I'll send someone when the important intros are over. A hush spread the kind that makes chandeliers hum. Of course, I said. One last thing. I stepped to the unattended mic. Emma, I said, steady. Your mother believes success without respect is failure in disguise. A murmur rolled the room. Emma's smile calcified. Dad, not now. I walked toward the terrace. Behind me, whispers multiplied. Outside, night air steadied me. The city glittered glass, steel. Roads I'd poured. Margaret called. It's enough, she said. Documented and timed, the committee meets Monday. If she corrects course within 72 hours, she keeps the funds. She won't, I said, watching her pose with the Ashworths, angling her shoulder to crop me from the frame. Prepare for impact, Margaret said. We can serve suspension tonight. Inside, Bradley signaled a waiter. Security drifted toward the doors. Serve it, I said. The door swung. Margaret, immaculate in navy, stepped into the ballroom with a leather folio and a silence that devoured music. Cameras pivoted. Emma turned, radiant and unprepared. Emma Morrison Sterling, Margaret said, voice like a gavel. By authority of the Morrison Trust, you are placed under provisional suspension pending review for public disrespect and rejection of a surviving family member. Ice cracked in glasses. Emma laughed, thin and high. You can't do this here. I just did, Margaret said. Bradley reached for Emma's elbow. Security stalled. Caroline's hand fell from Emma's shoulder. Emma found me at the terrace threshold, eyes bright with panic and fury. You planned this, she whispered. No, I said. You scripted it. Her lips parted, but a voice from the crowd cut through the hush. Excuse me, Harrison Parker called, stepping forward, eyes on me. Before this goes further, there's something everyone should know about Jake. Heads turned. Phones lifted. Emma hissed, Don't you dare. Harrison smiled. He's not just a construction worker. The ballroom leaned in as one. And that, he said, is where your real problem begins. Every camera found us, waiting for impact now. Harrison's voice carried like a drum beat, silencing even the string quartet mid-song. All eyes turned, champagne glasses lowered, and whispers flickered like sparks across the ballroom. Emma's posture stiffened, her smile cracking as though it had been glued on too tightly. Jake, Harrison said, stepping closer with the confidence of a man who knew the weight of his revelation, isn't just a construction worker. He's Jake Wilson, founder and CEO of Wilson Construction Group. The very company that built this ballroom, in fact. A ripple of shock tore through the room. Heads pivoted toward me, then back to Emma, whose face had gone pale beneath her expensive makeup. Bradley blinked rapidly, like the name was punching holes in his carefully arranged future. That's not true. Emma snapped, her voice sharp, high, desperate. Dad works with his hands. He drives a beat-up truck. Harrison cut her off with a dry laugh. Yes, he does all of that. But what you don't seem to grasp, Emma, is that authenticity and empire aren't mutually exclusive. Jake Wilson's company employs over 15,000 workers across 12 states. His projects total billions. He's ranked on Forbes. And tonight, you've treated him like he was disposable. The room's silence turned heavy, judgmental, suffocating. Emma's world, the one she'd built on glitter and fragile reputation, was cracking under the weight of truth. Emma's eyes darted to me, wide and frantic. Dad, why didn't you say anything? I let the silence stretch. My heart ached, but I kept my voice level, each word deliberate. Because I wanted you to value me as a father, Emma, not as a checkbook, not as an empire, just as the man who raised you. The crowd gasped. Some turned to whisper. Others stared at Emma with unveiled disappointment. The Ashworths quietly excused themselves, muttering something about unfortunate scenes. Caroline's diamond earrings caught the light as she shook her head, slipping into the shadows. Emma stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You embarrassed me. In front of everyone. Do you know what this does to my reputation? I met her eyes. Reputation built on lies will collapse faster than concrete poured on sand. Margaret Davis, still clutching her leather folio, cleared her throat. Emma Morrison Sterling, she said formally, her voice cutting like a blade. Tonight you've publicly rejected and humiliated your father in direct violation of Section 7, Clause 2 and Section 12, Clause 4 of the Morrison Trust. The committee has no choice but to proceed with revocation proceedings. Emma spun, her voice breaking. No, you can't. This isn't fair. I didn't know. Margaret's tone was calm, unforgiving. Ignorance is no defense. You signed the documents. You understood the terms. Respect is not optional. It is the foundation of this inheritance. The audience began murmuring, pulling out their phones, recording, live streaming. Emma realized too late that her humiliation was no longer private. It was viral. Bradley took a careful step back, his hand sliding from hers. Emma, he whispered harshly, you didn't tell me this. You said he was... Emma. He stopped himself, but the damage was done. His hesitation spoke louder than any insult. Emma's breath came in sharp gasps. Her hands shook as she clutched the microphone. You don't understand. All I ever wanted was to belong here, to prove I deserved it. And he, she pointed at me with trembling fingers, her voice splintering. He doesn't fit. The silence after her words was deafening. Finally, I stepped closer, my voice steady but heavy with finality. Emma, I don't need to fit into this world. I built it. The chandeliers above your head, the marble beneath your feet, the roads that brought every guest here tonight. They all exist because of the work you're ashamed of. And tonight, the only person who doesn't fit is you. Her face crumpled, the reality of her downfall pressing in from all sides. Margaret closed her folio with a sharp click. Effective immediately, your inheritance is frozen. You have 72 hours to comply with the committee's review. If you fail, the $33 million is gone. The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in schadenfreude. Emma stood in the center, shaking, mascara streaking down her face, her entire empire of illusions collapsing in a single brutal night. And I simply turned away, knowing the next move was mine. The ballroom dissolved into chaos. Guests whispered in frantic tones, phones lit up, flashes popped like lightning. Emma stood frozen at the center, her hands trembling as though she were balancing on shattered glass. Bradley had already stepped a full pace away from her, eyes darting between me and the crowd, calculating how much damage this scene would do to his name. Dad, please! Emma's voice cracked through the noise, softer now, no longer commanding. She clutched the microphone like it was a lifeline. This isn't what it looks like. Her words trailed off, drowned by the murmurs around us. Margaret remained unshaken, her expression professional, calm, merciless. Emma, you've had every opportunity to respect your father. Tonight, in front of 200 witnesses, you chose the opposite. The suspension is already in effect. Unless you repair this publicly within 72 hours, the inheritance is lost. Emma's chest heaved. Repair it? How am I supposed to repair this? She gestured wildly toward the guests, their judging stares, the recording phones. Her perfect world, now a cage. I kept my tone steady. You could start with honesty, with humility, the very things you've spent years running from. Her eyes snapped to mine, raw and desperate. Do you think I wanted this? To feel like you were holding me back? I just wanted to belong in their world. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. And in chasing their world, you destroyed your own. The room grew louder, restless. Bradley cleared his throat, forcing a smile toward the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we all need a moment. Please enjoy the drinks, the music. Emma and I will sort this out. His charm felt paper thin. He tugged Emma aside, his hand gripping her elbow a little too tightly. I followed with my eyes, watching him whisper sharply into her ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. His expression said it all: panic, blame, calculation. He wasn't protecting her. He was protecting himself. Emma jerked free, her voice rising again. Don't you dare make me the villain in front of them. You knew what this inheritance meant. Her shrill tone carried across the ballroom, silencing the music once more. Bradley's jaw tightened. Emma, without that money, what do you think we have? What do you think I have? The words dropped like a guillotine. Guests gasped. Someone muttered, So that's what this was about. Emma's face drained of color. For the first time, I saw something cut through her vanity fear. I stepped forward, no longer willing to let her sink further without truth. Emma, I said firmly, do you understand now? Money can buy rooms filled with strangers, but it can't buy loyalty. It can't buy love. And the man you've tied yourself to just admitted he was here for the inheritance, not for you. Bradley's face flushed red, but he didn't deny it. His silence was answer enough. Emma's voice broke into sobs, the sound raw and foreign against the grandeur of the ballroom. Mascara streaked her cheeks, diamonds glimmered against trembling hands, and the facade she'd spent years constructing lay in ruins. Margaret moved closer, speaking loud enough for the room. Emma Morrison Sterling, your conduct tonight confirms everything the committee has documented. Unless there is extraordinary contrition, your inheritance will be permanently revoked. Emma turned to me, her eyes glistening, her voice small. Dad, please, help me. Tell them I didn't mean it. I shook my head slowly. Meaning isn't the point. Choices are. And tonight, you showed the world exactly who you are. The crowd began to disperse, whispering, shaking their heads. Some pitied her. Others reveled in the downfall. Harrison Parker gave me a nod of respect before slipping away. Caroline Ashworth clutched her pearls and muttered something about poor breeding. The judgment was final, brutal, and unforgettable. Emma sank into a chair, her shoulders shaking. Bradley walked out without a word, leaving her surrounded by people, but utterly alone. I stood there a moment longer, letting the silence settle. Then I turned toward the exit, each step deliberate. Behind me, the empire Emma thought she had built was crumbling. Ahead of me, the reckoning was only beginning. Because by Wednesday morning, her $33 million inheritance would be gone, and she would finally learn the difference between wealth and worth. Monday morning arrived gray and heavy, the kind of sky that seemed to press down on the city itself. I sat in Margaret Davis's office overlooking downtown Los Angeles, the glass towers reflecting a world that thrived on appearances. The irony wasn't lost on me. For Emma, appearances had been everything. Now, those same appearances had destroyed her. Margaret entered with a stack of folders. Her expression told me the outcome before she spoke. The committee met this morning. The vote was unanimous. Complete forfeiture of Emma's inheritance. She has 72 hours to vacate the penthouse, return all liquid assets, and surrender anything purchased with trust funds, vehicles, jewelry, country club membership. It all goes. I nodded, steady. And the $5 million in cash she already spent? She's liable to repay. If she can't, debt collection will begin. Bankruptcy is the likely outcome. Margaret slid the papers across the table. Jake, by law, you're entitled to reclaim the funds as surviving family. If you'd like, we can transfer everything to you within the week. I looked at the document, then pushed it back toward her. No, let it go where it belongs. Children's charities. Elizabeth Morrison didn't leave that fortune so it could rot in a penthouse closet. She wanted it to mean something. Margaret's eyes softened. You're making the harder choice. No, I said. I'm making the right one. By Tuesday afternoon, consequences were everywhere. Emma's Bentley was repossessed outside a high-end restaurant, in full view of the Beverly Hills circle she once tried so hard to impress. Caroline Ashworth herself called me that evening, her tone apologetic, measured. Jake, Mr. Wilson, we didn't realize who you were. Please forgive. I cut her off. There's nothing to forgive. You treated me exactly as Emma wanted you to, as less. Wednesday morning, the final blow came. Emma's face appeared across gossip sites and financial news outlets. Heiress loses $33 million after publicly disowning father. The headlines were merciless. By noon, Bradley Sterling announced their engagement was on pause. By evening, he'd moved out of her penthouse, leaving nothing but a terse statement about irreconcilable differences. That night, I sat alone at my modest kitchen table. My truck keys lay beside me. The world now knew what Emma had lost, but I couldn't help wondering what, if anything, she had gained. 2 days later, I had my answer. I found her sitting on my porch steps, jeans torn, hair pulled back, eyes swollen from crying. She looked like a stranger, and yet she looked more like my daughter than she had in years. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. I didn't speak. I waited. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I don't know who I am without the money. I thought it made me strong. Turns out, it just made me hollow. She wiped at her face. I'm sorry. For all of it. For every time I called you an embarrassment. For every time I chose strangers over you. For forgetting the man who raised me. I sat beside her, the wood creaking under my weight. Sorry doesn't erase what happened, but it's a start. She nodded, silent tears falling. What do I do now? You live, you work, you learn what it means to build instead of inherit. That's the only way forward. For the first time in years, I saw humility in her eyes. Not fear, not vanity, but humility. It wasn't redemption, not yet, but maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of one. I put a hand on her shoulder, firm, but not forgiving. Emma, I love you. I always will. But love doesn't mean blind acceptance. If you want a relationship, you'll have to earn it. Just like respect. Just like trust. She nodded, whispering, I'll try. As the sun sank behind the city, I realized something. Emma had lost $33 million, her fiancé, and her status. But what she still had the chance to rebuild her soul was worth more than any inheritance. And for me, I hadn't lost a thing. I'd kept my integrity, I'd honored Rebecca's memory, and I'd finally taught my daughter the lesson she should have learned long ago. Money can be taken, status can vanish, but respect is earned one choice at a time.